Rain hammered against the abandoned greenhouse as Dr. Adrian Cole stumbled inside, breathless, shivering, and clutching his ribs. He had run 3 blocks after a man shoved him off a bench and threatened to smash the camera hidden in his backpack. His disguise, dirty coat, torn shoes, tangled hair, had worked a little too well. The billionaire scientist sank to the cold floor, chest heaving, wondering how a world with so much beauty still felt so unbearably cruel. His voice trembled as he whispered to himself that people were gardens, yet most seemed overrun with weeds. He needed to know if any real kindness remained. Outside, thunder cracked. Adrian wiped his face, smearing dirt and sweat. The experiment was supposed to be simple. Live as a homeless man for just 1 day, observe how people treated someone they believed had nothing. Instead, within the first 2 hours, he had been ignored, pushed aside, and cursed at by strangers who wouldn't even look at him. The world wasn't supposed to be this cold. He told himself to keep going. If he quit now, the entire point of this journey, his search for humanity's gentleness, would collapse. He stepped back out into the rain, gripping the railing for support as lightning flashed. His crew watched from a distance in a disguised van, recording everything. Adrian walked toward the small neighborhood park, hoping it would be quieter. His shoes squished with every step. His hands trembled. His throat burned with hunger, but he forced himself onward. Something inside him insisted that the day wasn't done. The world still had one more answer to give. The wind stung his cheeks as he reached a shabby wooden bench. A single dim streetlight flickered above it. He lowered himself and pulled his soaked coat tighter. Hours passed, and he watched people hurry by, umbrellas lifted high, collars pulled up, barely glancing toward the shivering man beneath the flickering light. His breath fogged before him, and he wondered how the real homeless survived nights like this. A woman stepped past him without hesitation, tugging her daughter away when the little girl tried to stare. Adrian sighed, his hope slipping further. Just as he prepared to stand, a shadow appeared through the curtain of rain, slow steps, careful steps, accompanied by the soft tapping of a walking stick. An elderly man approached, hunched slightly but moving with intention. His coat was worn thin, and his shoes had been patched several times. His gray beard was neatly kept despite its age. His name, as Adrian would soon learn, was Elias Turner. Elias stopped right in front of the bench and stared at Adrian with eyes full of gentle curiosity. "Did someone hurt you, son?" he asked, voice warm despite the cold air. Adrian swallowed hard, staying in character. "No, just the rain," he whispered, shivering. Elias studied him a moment longer before lowering himself onto the bench beside him, cane resting between his knees. He didn't flinch at Adrian's soaked, dirty clothes. He didn't pull away. He simply breathed in slowly and said, "Rain is honest. People ain't always." He let out a small chuckle that sounded like it had survived decades of storms. "But you look like you could use something warm." Adrian shook his head. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine," Elias replied, pulling a small plastic bag from his coat pocket. Inside was a sandwich, simple, wrapped in old parchment paper. Elias held it out. "I bought this for myself, but, looks like you needed more." Adrian felt his throat tighten. Elias's hands shook as he extended the sandwich. His fingers were thin, knuckles swollen from age and work. This man clearly didn't have much. Yet he was offering everything he had in that moment. "I can't take that," Adrian said quietly. "You can," Elias answered. Softly. "I've gone hungry before. At my age, missing a meal won't kill me. Though, you look like you got a long road ahead." The emotions hit Adrian like a wave. After hours of cold indifference, insults, and cruelty, this one-aged stranger was offering him warmth he hadn't earned. Adrian lowered his eyes and accepted the sandwich with shaking hands. Tears threatened but he blinked them back. Elias smiled gently, patted his shoulder, and said, "Eat. It'll help you see straight." Adrian took a tiny bite. It was stale and simple, but it tasted like the kindness he'd been searching for. He forced himself not to break. "Thank you," he whispered. "Don't thank me," Elias replied. "Thank the good soil left in the world. Every garden's got at least one flower still fighting to bloom." He glanced at Adrian with meaning. "Even you." The words struck Adrian deeply. Something inside him shifted. The old man's presence was like a small fire against the night. After a moment, Elias asked quietly, "Where you sleepin' tonight?" Adrian hesitated. "Nowhere, I guess." Elias nodded slowly. "There's an old tool shed behind the park caretaker's cabin. Leaks a bit, but better than sleeping in the open. I used it myself years ago." He chuckled again. If they caught me, I'd claim old age made me forget it wasn't my house. Adrian smiled despite himself. Why are you helping me? He asked. Elias looked at him with a softness that broke through every layer of Adrian's disguise. Because somebody once helped me when I had nothing. A stranger. Didn't know my name. Didn't ask for anything. And I promised myself, if I could ever give someone that same kindness, I would. His voice wavered slightly. We're all gardens inside, son. Some folks let theirs die. Some folks forget to water it. But some carry seeds in their pockets. Just hoppin'. Someone out there needs 'em. Adrian's chest tightened painfully. Elias Turner, poor, old, worn by life, had more humanity in him than all the wealthy, polished, comfortable people Adrian had encountered in months. He wanted to tell Elias everything. Who he was, why he was here, but the experiment wasn't done. Lightning flashed again, illuminating Elias's tired but kind face. Adrian inhaled deeply, grounding himself. Elias, he whispered, what if the world is too far gone? Elias tapped his cane lightly. Then you plant anyway. Before Adrian could respond, a sudden crash echoed behind them, a trash bin toppled over by the wind. Elias flinched and grabbed his chest. Adrian steadied him instinctively, and Elias managed a strained smile. Guess the storm's got more energy than both of us, he said. The rain intensified. Elias pushed himself up with difficulty. Come on, son, you shouldn't sit out here another minute. Adrian rose, ready to follow, when Elias suddenly stopped him with a hand on his arm. Listen, I don't know what got you out here tonight, but whatever it is, don't let it break you. There's still good out here. I promise. Adrian felt his eyes sting. His heart pounded against his ribs. He swallowed hard. Little did Elias know that his words were about to change the entire course of Adrian's life. Adrian followed Elias through the rain-soaked park, the old man's cane tapping rhythmically against the pavement. Every few steps, Elias coughed into his sleeve, and Adrian noticed how deep and strained the sound was. The man was clearly struggling, yet he kept walking, determined to help someone he believed was worse off than him. A stranger, a nobody, a homeless man. Slow down, Adrian murmured, holding an arm out. You don't have to push yourself like this. Elias waved him off, breathless but smiling. If I leave you alone out here, I'll be thinking about it all night. Can't sleep with guilt sitting on my pillow. They reached a small caretaker's cabin at the edge of the park, its windows dark, its wooden walls damp from the storm. Behind it stood the tool shed Elias mentioned, leaning slightly, paint peeling, roof sagging. There, Elias said, not much, but it'll get you through the night. Adrian's heart twisted. He didn't want to leave the old man in this storm, and more than that, he didn't want the night to end. Something about Elias's presence made him feel grounded in a way he hadn't felt in years. You're cold, Adrian said softly. You should go home. Elias chuckled. Home? That's generous. I got a little room above a grocery store. They fixed the roof last month, so at least I don't get rained on anymore. He shrugged like this was the nicest upgrade he'd ever had. Another cough shook him. Adrian stepped closer. Let me walk you, he urged. Elias raised a hand. No, you need to settle in. You'll be fine in there. I'll come check on you in the morning. He paused, eyes softening. People need checking on. Trust me. Adrian didn't move. He didn't open the shed. He only stared at Elias with a growing ache in his chest. Why? He asked quietly. Why do you care so much? For a moment, Elias said nothing. Rain fell between them like a curtain. Then the old man spoke, voice low and honest. Because I know what it feels like when no one does. He took a shaky breath, placing his hand on Adrian's shoulder. I may not have much these days. But what little I got, I'd rather use it to lift someone up than let it rot away with me. Adrian felt something raw and painful rise in his throat. He wanted to break character. He wanted to tell Elias everything. He wanted to give this man a warm bed, a hot meal, medical care, anything. But the cameras were rolling. The story wasn't finished. Elias patted his shoulder one last time. Get inside, rest. Adrian watched the old man turn and walk away, cane tapping through the storm. His silhouette grew smaller, swallowed by darkness and rain. And in that moment, Adrian felt something he hadn't expected at all. Fear, not for himself, but for Elias. Before he could convince himself otherwise, Adrian left the shed behind and followed from a distance, staying a few steps back so Elias wouldn't notice. The rain drenched him to the bone, but he barely felt it. He focused only on keeping Elias in sight. The old man's limp grew heavier as he made his way down the street. His cough worsened. Twice he had to stop to catch his breath. Adrian felt his fists clench. How had this man slipped through society's cracks? How had the world allowed someone with such a gentle soul to live with so little? As they approached the grocery store, Elias paused at the entrance, leaning heavily on his cane. A young clerk stepped outside and handed him a small brown bag. "Mr. Turner, you okay?" the clerk asked. "You're soaked." Elias chuckled weakly. "Storm tried to steal my hat. I won, but barely." "Your medicine's inside," the clerk said. "It's on the house this time." Elias blinked, touched. "Son, you can't keep doing that. I'll pay you back." The clerk shook his head. "Don't worry about it. You take care, all right." Elias nodded gratefully and slowly climbed the narrow staircase on the side of the building. His hands trembled as he fumbled with the key. Adrian's heart squeezed painfully. This wasn't right. None of this was right. He wanted to step forward, reveal himself, lift this burden. But he held back. The experiment needed to play out until morning. He needed to understand Elias fully, his life, his struggles, his story. Only then could he do what his heart demanded. When Elias finally disappeared inside, Adrian walked away, heading back toward the shed. The storm had begun to ease, leaving only a soft drizzle behind. But inside Adrian, a storm far stronger had begun to build. He reached the shed again, but he couldn't bring himself to go inside. Instead, he sat under the tiny overhang and stared at the ground, his thoughts loud and unrelenting. Elias Turner wasn't just a kind man. He was a reminder, a painful reminder, of the human beings society ignored and dismissed. People who gave even when they had nothing. Adrian wiped his face, unsure whether the wetness was from rain or emotion. "This isn't just an experiment anymore," he murmured. Hours passed. He dozed in and out of shallow sleep, his body freezing, his heart troubled. At dawn, sunlight pushed through the clouds, painting the world gold. Birds began to chirp. The air smelled fresh after the storm. Adrian stood, muscles stiff, and started toward Elias's place. He wanted to be there when the old man came out. He wanted to see him again. He needed answers, more of his story, more of his heart. But as he turned the corner toward the grocery store, he froze. A small crowd had gathered around the staircase. The clerk from the night before waved frantically to a paramedic. An ambulance siren faded as the engine cut off. 2 EMTs rushed inside the upper apartment. Adrian felt the ground tilt beneath him. "No," he whispered, stepping forward. He pushed through the bystanders just as the EMTs emerged, carrying Elias on a stretcher. Elias's eyes were half closed, his breathing shallow, his skin pale. Adrian's heart shattered. "Elias," he yelled, breaking character without realizing it. The paramedic held up a hand. "Please, sir, step back." Adrian moved closer anyway. "What happened?" The grocery clerk's eyes were red. "He knocked on my window at sunrise," said. His chest hurt, then he collapsed. Adrian felt like he couldn't breathe. "Can I go with him?" The paramedic hesitated. "Are you family?" Adrian swallowed hard. "No, but he helped me. Please." The EMT studied his face, then nodded. "Fine, get in." Adrian climbed into the ambulance, kneeling beside Elias. The old man managed to open his eyes just a little. When he saw Adrian, he smiled weakly. You all right, son?" he whispered. That nearly broke Adrian. He grabbed Elias's hand. "Don't talk, just breathe. I'm here." Elias exhaled, shaky but comforted. "Told you, people need checking on." Tears filled Adrian's vision. "Elias, I'm not who you think I am," he said softly. "And I promise you, when this is over, I'm not letting you walk alone again." The ambulance swerved through morning traffic, siren cutting the quiet air. Adrian held Elias's trembling hand, feeling every weak pulse like a punch to the chest. The old man's breaths were shallow, each one sounding like it could be his last. Adrian leaned closer, forcing his voice steady even as dread clawed at him from the inside. "You're going to be okay," he whispered. "You hear me, just hold on." Elias chuckled faintly, though even that small sound pained him. "You're a good kid," he murmured. "Even with the rough days you're having." A lump rose in Adrian's throat. He hadn't felt this helpless in decades, not since his mother had died when he was young. Back then he'd promised himself he would use science to fix the world, to protect people from needless suffering. But now, face to face with the frail breath of a man who had saved him with nothing but kindness, Adrian felt more powerless than ever. At the hospital, nurses rushed Elias into an emergency room. Adrian tried to follow but was stopped. "Please wait here," a nurse said firmly. Adrian nodded, but his chest ached as if something vital inside him had cracked. He sat on the cold waiting room bench, soaked clothes dripping onto the floor. Cameras were still rolling from the distance, but he no longer cared. The experiment was over. The disguise, the recordings, the plan, it all felt meaningless now. All he could think about was the old man fighting for breath behind those hospital doors. Minutes stretched like hours. He kept replaying every moment they'd shared, the sandwich, the gentle smile, the words about gardens and seeds. Elias had offered kindness effortlessly, without knowing who he truly was. Without expecting anything in return. Adrian looked down at his shaking hands. "Please be okay," he whispered. "Please." A doctor finally stepped out of the ER, peeling off gloves. "Are you with Mr. Turner?" Adrian stood so quickly the chair screeched. "Yes." "Is he?" "He's stable," the doctor said. "For now. Severe pneumonia, dehydration, and exhaustion. He needs rest and medication. But he made it through the worst of it." Relief washed over Adrian so forcefully his knees nearly buckled. "Can I see him?" Briefly. The doctor led him to a small room where Elias lay connected to oxygen, his breathing softer now. Adrian approached slowly. When Elias saw him, he smiled behind the mask, eyes crinkling. "You look like hell," Elias whispered faintly. Adrian let out a shaky laugh as he sat beside him. "You're one to talk." Elias's eyes brightened. "Thought I lost you in that storm," he murmured. "That's funny," Adrian replied. "I thought the same about you." Silence settled between them, warm, not heavy. Adrian studied the old man's fragile form, the rough hands, the lines earned from a lifetime that had never been easy. He felt a deep ache of guilt. Men like Elias should never be forgotten by society. They shouldn't be left to battle storms alone. "I need to tell you something," Adrian said softly. Elias raised an eyebrow. "You robbed a bank?" Adrian smiled. "No, I'm not who you think I am." Elias looked confused. So Adrian pulled off the dirty coat, the worn hat, and wiped some of the grime off his face. Slowly, Elias's expression shifted as recognition dawned. "You're that scientist," Elias whispered. "Adrian Cole." Adrian nodded, shame coloring his voice. "I didn't lie to you because I wanted to. I went undercover for a social experiment. I needed to see if kindness was still alive in the world." He swallowed hard. "And you had nothing. Nothing. Yet you gave me everything." Elias blinked slowly. "So, this whole time, you were testing me." "It wasn't about testing you," Adrian said, his voice trembling. "It was about finding hope. And the truth is, you've given me more hope than I've had in years." Elias's eyes softened. "Son, kindness ain't something you measure. It's something you give 'cause it keeps you human." "I know," Adrian whispered. "Now I do." Elias shifted weakly. "What now? You gonna use my face for your fancy documentary?" "No," Adrian said firmly. "Not unless you want that. This is your story, and yours to decide." He leaned closer, voice thick with emotion. "But I will tell you this. I'm not leaving you alone again. You're not going back to that tiny room above the store. You deserve better." Elias frowned gently. "Don't waste your money on me. I've lived my life, and I want you to live the rest of it comfortably," Adrian replied. "Let me do this, please." Elias opened his mouth to protest, but Adrian continued. "I'm buying you a home. A proper one. A place where you can rest without worrying about rent, storms, or skipped meals. And I'm giving you a monthly stipend, enough to live well. Not survive. Live." Elias's eyes went wide, then filled with tears. "Why me?" "Because when you had so little," Adrian whispered, "you gave so much. The world needs to honor people like you." Elias covered his face with trembling hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Adrian held his hand again, letting him cry, letting years of quiet struggle pour out in that hospital room. When Elias finally lowered his hands, he looked younger somehow, as if the burden he had carried for years had eased even a little. "You're a good man," Elias whispered. "No," Adrian said softly. You're the garden I was searching for." Elias chuckled weakly. "Guess you found your flower." "More than that," Adrian murmured. "You changed me." Over the next few days, Adrian stayed by Elias's side, refusing to leave. He oversaw his treatment personally, bringing in specialists, ensuring the best care possible. His team, stunned by how deeply the experiment had affected him, documented everything, with Elias's permission. When Elias was finally discharged, Adrian drove him to a small house on a quiet street, freshly furnished and warm. Elias's breath caught as he stepped inside. "I don't deserve all this," he whispered. "You deserve more," Adrian replied. "But this is a start." Elias walked slowly through the living room, tears clinging to his lashes. A framed picture of a garden hung above the fireplace, vibrant, alive, hopeful. Adrian had chosen it for a reason. He helped Elias sit down and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're home," Adrian said. Elias closed his eyes, letting the warmth sink in. "Thank you, son," he whispered. Adrian smiled. "Thank you." In the following weeks, Adrian released the documentary, The Garden Within. It wasn't a tale about homelessness. It wasn't a social experiment. It was the story of a man who gave his last sandwich to a stranger and ended up restoring a billionaire's faith in humanity. The video spread across the world. People cried, people shared, people remembered that kindness still existed. And in the final seconds of the film, Adrian spoke directly to the viewers. "If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and comment what kindness means to you. Let's make compassion grow again. Let's water the gardens within us." The screen faded to black, leaving one final quote from Elias: "Every heart's a garden. What you grow there, that's who you are." Adrian visited Elias every week. They shared meals, stories, laughter, and silence, the comfortable kind that only exists between people connected by something deeper than circumstance. And one quiet evening, as the sun set behind the little house Adrian had gifted him, Elias said, "You know, maybe my garden ain't as empty as I thought." "It never was," Adrian replied softly. "It just needed someone to see it." The old man smiled, eyes warm. "Then let's keep watering it. Together."